Hi all, and welcome to the Watch Lobby. Today's video is something I've been looking forward to doing for some time, and with some planning in the background, I've managed to get my hands on all three generations of the Green Submariner. Before we start, I just want to give a big shout out to my friends that generously lent these pieces into me to film and review. Clearly, without them, this video would never have made it out. Of course, I'm talking about the Rolex Submariner 16610 LV, which was dubbed the Kermit, the Submariner 116610 LV, which we all know as the Hulk, and finally the 126610 LV, which I think is still working through the teething stages of nicknames, some referring to it as the Starbucks or also the Cermit. This video isn't by any means an in-depth review. I plan on releasing further in-depth videos of each individual piece in the future. So if that's something you're interested in, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. My aim by the end of this video is to have a true reference point on differences for anyone out there that has ever gone out looking for any of these pieces or simply is just curious to know what the differences are. I'll be keeping this video purely objective, so you'll see on-screen real-world measurements of each of these pieces. Clearly, the biggest talking point amongst collectors out there have been sizing, particularly between the Maxi Case Hulk and the new 41 Cermit. So what better way to kick this one off than by going over the measurements for these pieces? Then we'll come back and dissect where all the differences are. Before we jump into it, I'll note that I've taken the lug-to-lug measurements of the case itself, so we can point out where the changes in the case have occurred, rather than the true lug-to-lug, which includes the solid end links of the bracelets. The easiest way to do this is in chronological order, so we'll start things off with the 16610 LV Kermit, circa 2004. The Kermit measured horizontally to include the crown, and it came in at 43mm. Measured diagonally from 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock, it came in at 39.3mm. Measuring the outer extremity of the lugs, it came in at 25.1mm. With a lug to lug of 44.1mm. The clasp itself coming in with a width of 16.6mm and a thickness of 12.6mm. Moving on to the Hulk, which we all know received the Maxi Case when it was released. The Hulk's measurements came in as such. Measured horizontally to include the crown, it came in at 44mm. Measured diagonally from 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock, it came in at 40.7mm. Measuring the outer extremity of the lugs, it came in at 28.2mm. Unfortunately, my footage for this measurement was corrupted. With a lug to lug of 47.3mm, the clasp itself coming in with a width of 17.6mm and a thickness of 12.6mm. Last but not least, the newly released Cermit or Starbucks, nicknamed to be confirmed. Measured horizontally to include the crown, it came in at 44.3mm. Measured diagonally from 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock, it came in at 41.1mm. Measuring the outer extremity of the lugs, it came in at 27mm. With a lug to lug of 47.3mm. The clasp itself coming in with a width of 18.6mm and a thickness of 12.4 millimeters. So now that we've covered off all the measurements, let's break it all down and see where the significant changes are. We'll make comparisons with the previous generation of each piece. So we'll be comparing sizes of the Kermit versus the Hulk, then the Hulk versus the Cermit or Submariner 41. As expected, we knew there would be a diameter change between the Kermit and Hulk, where we saw a 1mm growth in the horizontal measurements of the Hulk. We saw a significant change in the diagonal measurement. We see roughly a 1.5mm growth in the case of the Hulk. Another significant change we see is on the outer lug measurement, where we see a growth of 3.1mm to the Hulk's lugs. But we see the biggest measurement change in the lug to lug measurement, where the Hulk grew 3.2mm. The clasp only grew 1mm and the thickness remained the same. Naturally, with the areas where the Hulk saw the growth, started to present a squarer aesthetic to the maxi case, and over the years that has become a very polarizing discussion. Let me know what your preference is down in the comments. Maxi case or pre-ceramic? Now, let's go over what arguably caused some noise in the watch community in 2020, when Rolex unveiled their new 41mm sub. In this instance, we'll make the comparison between the Hulk and the Cermit, as I'm sure that's what we're all waiting to see. With its horizontal measurement, we only saw the Cermit grow 0.3 of a millimeter, and only 0.4 of a millimeter when measured diagonally. The outer lug extremity shrunk considerably, down 1.2 millimeters. The lug to lug measurement remained the same, and we saw the clasp grow by 1 millimeter in width, which makes sense as the lug width itself also grew by 1 millimeter. And a great surprise was to see the overall thickness shrink by 0.2 millimeters, most likely brought on by the introduction of a new movement for the Submariner. One of the most considerable changes we did see between the Hulk and Cermit was the introduction of the caliber 3235 to the Submariner line, where we previously saw the 3135. The 3235's biggest advantage is that it packs a whopping 22 hours of extra power reserve over the 3135, which sees the 3235's power reserve shoot up to roughly 70 hours. After handling all pieces, I don't think there is a clear-cut winner, as most of the changes are extremely subjective. All three pieces offer something special in their own right. I know seeing the disappearance of that sunburst green dial on the Hulk will be missed. Seeing where the grey market currently stands locally, if you're trying to decide between the two, I think you really need to just ask yourself if you want that sunburst dial or not. Now, I know this video was crammed in with a lot of real-world measurements and comparisons between the pieces, so I hope it was informative for all you out there. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Stay tuned as we have some great content planned which will be hitting your screens in the not so distant future. And as always, thank you for watching and stay safe.